Small disciplines completed with consistency lead to great achievements slowly over a long time. That's a quote from John Maxwell, an expert and author who's helped millions through books on success. Right now, as you watch this video, there's probably a gap between where you are and where you want to be. And I've been in your exact shoes before, struggling to work towards my goals because some days I just wouldn't feel like it. But eventually, I got sick of not achieving anything and decided to make a change. So I conducted research on the world's top performing athletes, entrepreneurs, and scientists just to figure out what makes them stay so consistent. Because consistency is the one thing that is guaranteed to help you succeed. And it all boils down to 9 brutal truths that you must understand. Brutal truth number 1. You are trying way too hard. Let me introduce you to a New York Times best-selling author, Tim Ferriss. When Tim was a young adult, he was given the same usual advice. Climb the corporate ladder, work 40 hours a week, and get a stable career. But he decided early on that that wasn't going to be his path, so he looked for ways to expand his business and increase his wealth. Now, this wasn't easy at all. In the early 2000s, Tim spent most of his time broke, scrounging around for business. He was burnt out and micromanaging everything, so one day he would be at the top of his game and the next he couldn't get out of bed. So Tim reached a crossroads. Does he continue this life of desperation or does he just give up? It turns out the answer was really neither, so Tim decided to change everything he was doing. Before, Tim would look at productivity hacks that could help him maximize every single minute of his day. Now he uses strategies like focusing just on keystone habits, which I'll explain later in this video. Before, he stressed about learning every single detail whenever he was trying to learn something new. Now he focuses on the 80-20 rule, which allows him to just learn the most crucial information. You can apply this rule to whatever goal you're trying to achieve, whether that be create a new business, start making content, or just expand your wealth. By focusing on only what truly matters, you're gonna make sure you're consistent with your effort towards important tasks. Now let's talk about keystone habits. A keystone is just the central piece that holds everything else together, and for Tim, these were his daily habits. And each daily habit went through his extensive testing to make sure every single one would help him stay more consistent. So make sure you keep an eye out because I'm gonna be sharing a bunch of his keystone habits throughout the rest of this video. For now though, we'll move on to brutal truth number 2. It takes a village. I'm almost certain you know who Elon Musk is. The billionaire tech mogul who's the CEO of SpaceX and Tesla. But he didn't achieve all of his success on his own. A privately owned space company was an absolutely ridiculous idea, but Elon had a vision for SpaceX. So he searched everywhere to find the most innovative engineers in the entire world, and he utilized this team to build the biggest private space company ever. So why in the world are you trying to be consistent on your own? You need to build a team of close friends, family, and just anyone you can trust to make this entire process easier. Speaking of building a team, that's exactly what I'm doing on this channel. I want to be someone you can trust and rely on, so comment if you ever have any questions. So subscribe so we can build this team bigger and help more people out. Welcome back. Now let's talk about why it's important you have your own personal team. You probably have placed limiting beliefs on yourself before, like, no one from my town makes this much money. But when someone with an unbiased point of view provides their insight, you're gonna see right through these limiting beliefs. They're gonna be honest with you on what you're actually able to achieve, and they're gonna tell you how hard you're actually working towards your goals. Just by providing that unbiased point of view, they're gonna support you throughout this entire journey. You're gonna build a team of accountability partners. So anytime you're not consistent with your approach towards your goals, you're gonna have to provide them a reason. And when you have to say it out loud to other people, you're gonna see how ridiculous your excuses might be. But don't get discouraged because of your excuses. Instead, find a way to develop and become better because of it. Let's move on to brutal truth number 3. Not all progress can be seen. Before writing one of the world's best-selling books, Atomic Habits, James Clear was posting on his blog, consistently posting twice a week, every week. And after a while, he was rewarded with no money, no readers, and no recognition. This continued on for years. James couldn't seem to get a single viral moment. He tried catchier titles, different word usage, different writing styles, nothing worked for him. But James understood the power of invisible progress, so after every single failure, he was never discouraged. Every time he opened his laptop and wrote something for his blog, he was refining his writing ability and his ideas. Over time, this had a huge compounding effect for James, but we'll touch on that power later in this video. For now, let's talk about how you too can leverage invisible progress to become more consistent. If you're trying to achieve anything worthwhile, odds are there's a measurable result that you're after. It could be increasing the money your business makes or building a social media following. Either way, your progress is not going to be linear. So even if you're making no visible progress at all, you must be consistent with your effort. Here's exactly how you're going to do that. You're no longer going to track this external metric that you're chasing. Instead, you're going to put your effort on tracking your input. By doing this, you no longer force yourself to see growth as consistency. Instead, you see your consistent efforts as more than enough to motivate you, which leads me right into brutal truth number 4. Motivation is not enough. By the time I release this video, the Super Bowl is going to be over, but Jalen Hurts voiced his skepticism about motivation and momentum. After a huge victory over the LA Rams, a reporter asked Jalen how he felt about the power of momentum in football. Jalen's reply, "I don't believe in momentum. I don't think it's real. It can begin and end at any moment. An incredible quote that contradicts everything that modern sports stands for. Most athletes love to ride the wave of their success and carry that positivity throughout the game. The positivity helps them stay consistent with their efforts, but Jalen believes something completely different. Because if you stop working because you lost momentum, that means you never had consistency in the first place. So it doesn't matter if you're the star quarterback in the Super Bowl or if you're just trying to get to the gym every morning. Real consistency isn't about riding the highs or falling to the lows. It's about persevering no matter what, which leads me right into keystone habit number 1, waking up early. It's something simple that you can do consistently and it will have a profound effect on the rest of your day. If you wake up early, you're going to be naturally able to get to work sooner, have more time to work out, and go to bed at a better time. Keep in mind the brutal truth I just shared with you and how it's important to not ride off motivation or momentum when you're trying to build keystone habit number 1. Now let's look at brutal truth number 5. Subtraction is the best addition. In the mid 1990s, Apple was failing. Yes, iPads, iPhones, iMacs, that Apple. The company couldn't figure out what was going wrong. They were the head of innovation with over 500 products available to the market. But Steve Jobs figured it all out. You see, after being kicked out of Apple previously, Steve returned in 1997 as the CEO. He was faced with a really difficult decision: change everything or let Apple continuously spiral downwards. Now, he knew the majority of their problems stemmed from the overexpansion of products, so he made a radical decision. Steve decided to cut their product line down from 500 to 10, and he also reduced the amount of product types Apple was offering. And after switching Apple's focus onto 4 main categories, the company consistently overperformed expectations. So how does this really relate to you? Well, I want you to take a mental note of the main things you want to accomplish in the next 90 days. Then I want you to write down everything you do on the average day. If it doesn't align with these goals you just set, I want you to cross it out. By cutting out distractions, you set yourself up for better focus and higher quality work, which is what true consistency is really about. Subtraction is the best addition because your effort will be better focused. You're no longer going to be pulled in 1,000 different directions. Now, after you deal with these distractions, it's time to face brutal truth number 6. You don't have enough time. We're going to take a look into another entrepreneur's early career, Jeff Bezos. Now, the supergiant Amazon wasn't always destined for success. It actually started as a scrappy company out of Jeff Bezos' garage. In the early days, Bezos was packing boxes, pitching investors, and innovating all by himself. Even after working 12 to 14-hour days, his efforts still weren't enough. The company wasn't growing and he was burnt out. But he fixed this with one single change: relentless prioritization. No longer was Bezos going to waste his effort on meaningless tasks. Instead, he would only focus on the highest priorities and delegate everything else. He began hiring experts in different fields, and from there, he was extremely consistent in growing Amazon's operations. Obviously, this approach panned out because Amazon is consistently one of the top 5 most valuable companies in the world. But here's what you can learn from Bezos' story to become more consistent. First is actually keystone habit number 2, auditing your time. Evaluate where your time is going. Take a week to track everything you're doing. Be brutally honest. How much of it is actually going towards your goals? Second, you must delegate or automate. If possible, get your hands off tasks that others could do better or are just simply taking up your time. Effective prioritization frees up a lot of your time and allows you to consistently follow through on your goals. Now here's brutal truth number 7. Willpower isn't enough. 23 gold medals. That's how many Michael Phelps has won in his prolific Olympic career. But it hasn't just always been smooth sailing for him. In fact, in 2008, Phelps was 0.01 seconds away from losing the 100-meter breaststroke. And it was after this race that Phelps realized simply relying on determination and willpower wasn't going to be enough for him. So he reevaluated everything. He needed a more consistent and structured approach to continue performing at a high level. Phelps made a big change. He hired an entire new team of coaches and specialists. They optimized his nutrition, training, and sleep to make sure he was always performing at his peak. But what truly set him apart from everyone else was when he hired a mental coach, a specialist in sports psychology. This coach helped him focus on mental resiliency and visualization, so high pressure moments no longer fazed him at all. Now for a second, I just want you to imagine how much more consistent you would be if you didn't just have to rely on your willpower. Throughout your entire day, there are so many temptations that could take you away from your goals. Your attention is a highly valuable resource, so you need to do your best to remove these distractions entirely from your life. Because if you're not having to put in the effort to consistently fight against those temptations, you're going to be so more consistent in the pursuit of your goals. Now, this next truth is one of the most important pieces of advice I've ever received. Brutal truth number 8. Nobody cares until you win. And even with all of the controversy and all of the hate surrounding him, I couldn't think of a better example than Kanye West. In the early 2000s, Kanye said something radical. He said he would be one of the greatest producers and fashion influencers of all time. Sure, he had some good tracks here and there, but people would laugh and dismiss his claims of being one of the greatest of all time. And after a few albums, he cemented himself as one of the best rappers and producers ever. But he was still met with skepticism when he entered the fashion world in 2015. That was when he partnered with Adidas to create Yeezy. And by 2020, that company was valued at over $1 billion, making Kanye one of the most wealthy artists in history. So even after all the ridicule, skepticism, and disbelief, everyone turned around eventually. By the end of his run, Kanye was really seen as a visionary. Maybe right now you're thinking about starting a new business or building a new habit, or maybe you're thinking about creating content online. Regardless of what you want to do, one fact is inevitable. You're gonna face a lot of criticism. Whether from friends, family, or complete strangers, it doesn't really matter. Just be ready for it to come and don't let it mess with your consistency. And the method you're gonna implement is known as Keystone Habit number 3. Embrace feedback. Whenever someone gives you a negative input, try your best to not take it to heart. Instead, look at it in an analytical, very logical way and try to figure out why they said that. If you can understand their reasoning, you can use that as leverage to improve yourself. This will help you avoid emotional instability and be more consistent. And with that, we are now in the last brutal truth of the video, and this may change everything I've told you before. Brutal truth number 9, consistency doesn't mean success. You have spent this entire video learning about consistency, the ins, the outs, the do's, the don'ts, but consistency is not enough by itself. Albert Einstein said insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. If you spend your entire life doing the same mediocre tasks over and over again, nothing is going to happen. That's why the true key to success is consistent adaptation. Let's look at the learning pit so I can show you exactly how chasing after your goals is going to go. At first, things are going to seem super easy. You're going to be at the beginning peak and you're going to have a clear plan to how to get to your goal. Then you will start and immediately you're going to begin harshly slipping down the slope. Your plan's going to crumble and everything is going to start seeming like a total failure. That's until you reach the pit. Now at this point, you feel like you know nothing. There's no one there to guide you and you don't know what the next step even is. You feel like you've wasted all this time learning something new for no reason. This is where the majority of people stay forever. Things get hard for the first time and they just give up before they figure it out. But if you can make it through the pit, you will begin climbing. And this is where all of your previous efforts will come to fruition. Just through some adaptation and perseverance, you can make it to the top of the mountain. But consistency alone would have left you in this pit forever. It was adaptation that helped you crawl your way to success. And if you plan on learning anything else in the future, I just made a video on how to learn 10 times faster through a few simple tricks.